Now let's look at more complex functions. Here we have a table that just has some text entries here, and we're going to count the number of times something appears. Like for instance, let's count the number of times apple appears here in this list. So to do that, we're going to start entering a formula. I just type the equals key, and I'm going to use a function called COUNTIF. And you can look up COUNTIF over here and read about it down here. And it counts the number of cells in a collection that satisfy a given condition. So the COUNTIF function takes an array here and a condition. So the array that we're going to take is this group of cells, and the condition is that it's got to equal apple. So we could just type in quotes the word apple, and the result we get is 5 because there are 5 occurrences of the word apple here. If we were to change one of them, like let's change this to orange, we can see it automatically updates to 4. So it automatically updates to include that. Now instead of including a range like B2 to B12, we could have just clicked here or typed the letter B to say give us the entire column. And then we get the same result. But as we add more cells here, we don't have to worry about whether or not the range expands because it's just going to include everything in this column. Typically when you're using something like that, you wouldn't put it here. You would put it in a footer. So we have the footer here, or actually we just have a regular row here. We're going to change it to a footer by doing that in the table sidebar, making the last row a footer. And here is where we would add our formula, COUNTIF, and then the entire column and apple. And we get 5 there. And as we add something new to here, if we add another row and add an apple to it, we can see we come out with 6. So we could do that to count. Now to get even more complex, there's another function called SUMIF. Now it doesn't make sense to do a sum here because we don't have any numbers. We're just counting items. But what if there were numbers here in the next column and we wanted to sum only the numbers where apple was here? So the way that SUMIF works, and we can look it up, is we see it takes test values. So that would be what we're testing, which is B. That's the first parameter. Second parameter is the condition. And we'll type in apple there. And the third is the sum of values. So in that case we want to use C. What we've got with B and C there, the first and third parameters here, are basically 2 matching sets. And they have to match exactly. So in this case B and C match exactly. There are 2 columns here in the same table. They're always going to have the same number of rows. They match perfectly. And we're using B as the condition to see if the value in column B matches apple. And if it does, take the value in column C and include that as part of the sum. And I will hit plus, and you can see 38, and that only includes the ones that have apple in them. So here, for instance, there's orange and it's 2. If I change that to 3, it doesn't change the sum because the orange isn't added in. But apple will. So I change that to 9, and you can see it increases by 1. So you can use COUNTIF to count things, and you can use SUMIF to do something very similar but create a sum from a separate set as the one you're testing for the condition.